We've been talking about prayer and just what it is, what it means, the importance of prayer. And I just went right back to the beginning. What is prayer? And prayer is simply defined as a solemn request for help or an expression of thanks that can be addressed to God, it can be addressed to an object of worship. But in all of these, it's just that request for help. It's like, Lord, let me cry out to you. And that's why we're just trying to stress the importance for each one of us to have that relationship with God. So with these, I want that deeper relationship for each one of us here. So we talked about how the purpose of prayer is the glory of God and how that glory is a weight. We've talked about in James that you can ask amiss. And for each one of us, I think it can be just an absence sometimes in our lives. We prayed this morning, and when I left for Michigan, those same 4 people were praying, and I get back, and it's the same 4 people that are still praying here now. So it's wonderful that they have that consistency in prayer, but it's completely frustrating. It is like, really, the only 4 people are just 4 people that were here before? So it's just trying to stress that importance for each one of you that come together and pray. So for some of us, you may even wonder, does God even hear my prayer? And sometimes we think, well, God hears all our prayers. Well, does he? Psalm 66 says, if I regard wickedness in my heart, the Lord will not hear. And Proverbs 1:28 and 29 says, then they will call on me, but I will not answer. They will seek me diligently, but they will not find me, because they hated knowledge and did not choose to fear the Lord. And in Isaiah, speaking out to the wonderful rebellious nation of Israel, when I spread out your hands in prayer, or when you spread out your hands in prayer, and I hide my eyes from you, even when you offer many prayers, I am not listening. So it may seem sometimes that your treatment of the things of the Lord, that it may be that you have ignored him for some times, and sometimes it just might seem that he is just not hearing. But I want that you would come to the Lord and realize that he will hear you. In 2 Chronicles 7, it says this, then if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, I will hear from heaven and will forgive their sins and restore their land. So, how as a nation are we humbling ourselves? Because it seems like we're just saying how strong we are and we can do it on our own. And I think that if we can humble ourselves, if we can't humble ourselves, then we will be humbled as a nation. And that's true of each one of us, and it's true of each household, that if we as a household will humble ourselves, then the Lord will turn and hear our prayer. What I want for you today is that, like it says in Psalm 6, return, O Lord, and deliver me. O save me for your mercy's sake, for in death there is no remembrance of you. In the grave, who will give you thanks? I am weary with my groaning. All night I make my bed swim with tears. And he goes on to say finally that the Lord has heard my supplication and will receive my prayer. And that's what I want for you all. What I want is that the God in Revelation says this. He said to me, it is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To the thirsty I will give water without cost from the spring of the water of life. Those who are victorious will inherit this, and I will be their God, and they will be my children. We're living in that gap between when Jesus said on the cross, it is finished, to when God says in Revelation, it is done. And we have this time to cry out to him in prayer and make that relationship with him. And that's what I want for each one of us. And how do we get there? We start with a humble request, and that is prayer. So, Pastor wanted me to start talking on James chapter 2, and we're talking about prayer. So I read chapter 2, and there's no prayer in there. So I read it again. I'm like, what am I going to talk about? This is like, I'm not seeing it. So I read it a third time, and I was like, oh, I know where to go with this. So today we're going to talk about prayer, and we're going to start by talking about prostitution. So you never know what you're going to get in the Bible. You're going to come in sometimes, and it's like wars. It's going to be wonderful, great things, and other times we're going to start out with people in sin. And that's what we're talking about with James today. So at the very last verse in James chapter 2 says this, just as the body is dead without breath, so also faith is dead without good works. If you go back to 19, you get this. You say you have faith, for you believe that there is one God. Good for you. Even the demons believe this, and they tremble in terror. How foolish. Can't you see that faith without good deeds is useless? Don't you remember that our ancestor Abraham was shown to be right with God by his actions when he offered his son Isaac on the altar? You see, his faith and his actions worked together. His actions made his faith complete. And so it happened, just as the scriptures say, Abraham believed God, and God counted him as righteous because of his faith. He was even called a friend of God. So we are shown to be right with God by what we do, not by faith alone. Rahab the prostitute is another example. She was shown to be right with God by her actions when she hid those messengers and sent them safely away by a different road. Just as the body is dead without breath, so also faith is dead without good works. So if you have faith, but you don't have the works that go along with it, what do you have? You have nothing. You have just empty breath. And that's the same is true with a relationship. We have to realize that the presence of God is to admit that he is God, and that we need to see our own need, our own depravity, so that we have the faith not to go our own way in our own strength, but that faith has to lead you into action with him, to crying out in prayer and in desperation and in need that leads to that relationship with him, that leads then to action. So that's what I'm trying to get for us today. I'm going to go back and talk about Rahab. So if you think about Abraham, Israel, they're always talking about Father Abraham. Well, we have Abraham as our father. But James is bold enough to compare Rahab in the same breath as Abraham. So it's obviously that we really need to take a good look at this woman and her example. So I'm going to take it all the way back to Joshua in the Old Testament. So Joshua chapter 1, verse 1 says this, after the death of Moses, the Lord's servant, the Lord spoke to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' assistant. And God, being nice and blunt, Moses, my servant, is dead. Therefore, the time has come for you to lead these people, the Israelites, across the Jordan River into the land I am giving them. I promise you what I promised Moses. Wherever you set your foot, you will be on land that I have given you, from the Negev wilderness in the south to the Lebanon mountains in the north, from the Euphrates River in the east to the Mediterranean Sea in the west, including all the land of the Hittites. No one will be able to stand against you as long as you live, for I will be with you as I was with Moses. I will not fail you or abandon you. Be strong and courageous, for you are the one who will lead these people to possess all the land I swore to their ancestors I would give them. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the instructions Moses gave you. Do not deviate from them, either turn to the right or the left. Then you will be successful in everything you do. Study this book of instruction continually. Meditate on it day and night, so you'll be sure to obey everything written in it. Only then will you prosper and succeed in all you do. That is my command. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. So that's how the Lord sends somebody out. Be strong. Be courageous. I will be with you wherever you go. Wherever you set your foot, I've already given you that land. He doesn't say it's going to be easy. He doesn't say he's not going to have wars. He doesn't say he's not going to be tempted. But he says over and again, be strong. Be courageous. Go make this happen. And then the next verse, he's starting to get into chapter 2, it talks about Rahab. Then Joshua secretly sent out 2 spies. So maybe not boldly sends them out. He does send them out secretly. From the Israelite camp in the acacia grove, he instructed them, scout the land on either side of the Jordan River, especially around Jericho. So the 2 men set out and came to the house of a prostitute named Rahab and stayed there that night. So obviously there's a little bit of a gap there. Because if you're thinking about it, it's like, well, he sends them out and they go right to this house of a prostitute? That doesn't quite make any sense at all. But if you think about Rahab, she's going to be watching the square. She's going to be watching for new men to come into the square, and then she'll be able to apply her trade. So what she obviously did is that she saw that these 2 are different. These 2 are Israelites. The whole area around them is quaking in fear because they know that the Israelites have crossed the river Jordan, and the first step of their conquering the area is going to be to take down Jericho. So everyone, it says that the hearts have melted before them. So as a prostitute, no one's really going to care about her too much. Obviously, where she lives, no one's going to care. If the Israelites come and destroy her nation and her people, they're probably not going to save her as a prostitute. But knowing that she is seeing the men of God, she has faith to at least start to act. So she recognized right in front of her that these are the men of God. If I can align myself with them, if I can fall under the covenant of them, I might have a chance to save myself, and I might have a chance to save my family. So she looks down and recognizes that these were men sent from God, from the leader whose nation is led by God, and she reaches out in faith, and she acts on it. And that's what we need to do. We need to realize that we can draw close to God. We don't have to look for just the man of God. I don't have to follow Pastor Mike around waiting for a word from him, because that veil has been torn. We can draw right close to God. So we can draw close to him and reach out to him, and that's what prayer is. We have that chance to ask humbly, can I come? Lord, I need this. I need this from you. I need your faith. I need your word. So are we going to do that? Are we going to recognize that the people of God are right in front of us? Or do we need to realize also that we're the people of God and that others should be drawing close to what they see in us as well? So all those people that are maybe lost in sin should be recognizing that you have something to offer to them. Rahab recognizes the men of Israel, and her heart is melting in fear facing them. But maybe she could save her family if she could attach herself to them. And where does that lead to us? Are we drowning in the comfort in America, having not enough? Are we praying through that the GPS 30 each day and realize that some of these nations have such a little amount? They have people living in rock huts that are persecuted, and their church is stronger than ours are. Are we living in that boldness that it takes to align ourselves on the side of Christ no matter what that costs us? And that courage that Christ asks of us is to take that action. What can we do here? What do I need to do personally? What do we need to do as a nation? And where does that courage take us to break out of our comfort zone and actually start action? So it starts, I think, with looking at the Spirit. We're looking at connecting with the power. As Pastor Mike said a couple weeks ago, that we need to connect to that power source. And we should realize that upon each one of us is that glorious weight that we should nearly be bowed down under, because without that breath and that connection, then we don't have anything that's going to lead us towards that action that we have to glorify him in this life. So should we pray? Yes. But we also need to act. In the words of John Wesley, he says this: do all the good you can by all the means that you can, in all the ways that you can, in all the places that you can, at all the times that you can, to all the people that you can, as long as ever you can. Like Jesus, we should pray as though it all depended on God, but act responsibly and obediently as though it all depended on us. In thinking about through this little quick talk, some of the different songs come to mind, and things like The Same Power, which he's quoting his wife. He wasn't quoting me, because when we talked about it, I told him I didn't like that song. So, because what you see in that song is you have this power. We have the same power of Christ. And it frustrates me every time we play it, because most of the time I don't see us acting that out. I see us singing the song and praying that that's going to happen, but I don't see the action to back it up. And the song itself is frustrating. But that's what we need. We need to at least be voicing that kind of song, voicing those kind of prayers that will lead us into a stronger relationship and a stronger faith with Christ. Amen. So my question for you today then is going to be this: where is the Spirit calling you? When we left, Sarah and I used to sit right over there, and we're still sitting right over there. So knowing that change starts in me, we talked about this last week, that after this weekend, we're probably going to start sitting different places. As much as we like sitting by family, we need to get into each other's business. We need to have those new relationships. We need to make new connections and sit by people that we don't talk to very often and get into their business, because maybe they need something from us, and maybe we need something from them. And I would ask that maybe from each one of you. Maybe he's asking you to go sit by somebody different next week, just to make a little bit different connection with them. As a church, we're a family. And we can't just be a family over here where Angel always sits. And we can't be a family over here where Pastor Mike always sits. We kind of need to get in each other's business a little bit. Maybe it's something completely different. Maybe it's something with where you work, something different in where you live. This life is a gift, but it's Christ's life in us, and we're to be surrendered to him in his life. Galatians 2:20 says this, I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. And the life I now live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. Some of you, myself included, tremble at what that means. What will be asked of me? What do I have to do? What do I have to give up to live this life of Christ? But really the question is, what are you going to gain? Because it's simply giving him the glory that he deserves with the life that it should be his, not mine. Amen. Rahab wanted to keep herself alive. And, a prostitute in Jericho probably was not worth a whole lot. And she knew her life was going to end. She knew that her way of life was going to end. But why not try and align herself with the one who has life, with the nation that has life, the nation that could walk through a sea, that could bring plagues on Egypt? And that's what we need to be asking ourselves as well. It's why not align ourselves with Christ and that same power that he has? It's realizing that it doesn't have to be that hard. She simply comes to the men of Israel, and she says this in Joshua chapter 2. Before the spies went to sleep that night, Rahab went up on the roof to talk with them. I know the Lord has given you this land. We are all afraid of you, everyone in the land living in terror, for we have heard how the Lord made a dry path for you through the Red Sea when you left Egypt. And we know what you did to Sihon and Og, the two Amorite kings east of the Jordan River, whose people you completely destroyed. No wonder our hearts have melted in fear. No one has the courage to fight against such things after hearing such things. For the Lord your God is the supreme God of the heavens above and the earth below. Now swear to me by the Lord that you will be kind to me and my family since I have helped you. Give me some guarantee that when Jericho is conquered, you will let me live, along with my father and mother, my brothers and sisters, and all their families. She simply comes to them with a solemn request for help, a prayer. And she asks those that can dictate her future. And we can do the same thing. All we have to do is go to God that can dictate our future and ask. It doesn't have to be hard. It's simply like picking up the phone. And I was supposed to come up with something to connect with the kids, so I'm trying. So, maybe not. Maybe it won't work. We'll see. Ringing? Oh well. Could you get me some water? Just like that, right? Easy. So all we have to do is ask. It's like sometimes you come up with a need. I have a solemn request. I can go to one that can actually help me and answer that for me. And that's all it takes, is just simply asking. Now sometimes the answer might be no. I might get a glass of water. If I'd ask for something different, Pastor Mike might say no. He's like, no soda in the sanctuary. So answer might be no sometimes. But sometimes it might be yes. Matthew 7 says this, ask and it shall be given you, seek and you shall find, knock and it shall be opened unto you. Thanks, sweetie. So what are we asking for? Because it's not that hard. This talk and so many of these talks with prayer is simply it's a call to action. It's for us to be strong and of good courage and come to the Spirit's call and have the courage to act on what He has for your life. We're people of wants. We're people of needs. And does the Lord care what we want or what we need? It's the passions that He put in our life that He's given us. But what He wants over and over and over again is to be glorified. in your life, in my life, in the life of our nation and our households. He wants to be glorified in that. Asking outside what glorifies him is asking amiss. John Piper would say that God is most glorified when we are most satisfied in him, and that if we need to be most satisfied in him with our lives, what we really cannot call ourselves Christians if we are not most enjoyed and satisfied by Jesus. That's a rough statement. That if we have things in our lives that are taking us away from him, that we're putting above the satisfaction found in him, it's simply idolatry. So it's tough stuff that we need to face sometimes. But here's the thing. 1 Peter says this, "In this you greatly rejoice, though now for a little while, if need be, you have been grieved by various trials, that the genuineness of your faith, being much more precious than gold that perishes, though it is tested by fire, may be found to praise, honor, and glory at the revelation of Jesus Christ, whom having not seen, you love. Though now you do not see him, yet believing, you rejoice with joy inexpressible and full of glory, receiving the end of your faith, the salvation of your souls." There's going to be some trials. We're told to expect that. But we should be able to come in here and dance, knowing that we have the salvation in Jesus. And if we can't come in here and dance, or have that presence within us that just bubbles out of us all day long, and that wonderful, wonderful joy, then are we not even realizing or understanding our own salvation, our own forgiveness, like what we've already been given? We should be able to come in here and just be so excited to come and worship with another person and share about Jesus and just come into the presence of his Spirit and the presence of Jesus. There should just be this wonderful, inexpressible joy to come and glorify him. So that's what I'm asking for you today. What are you asking for? What is Jesus asking of you? Rahab, she took a chance and she asked, and then the next time you hear about it, it's in the Gospels when it talks about she's the mother of Boaz, who was the grandfather of Jesse, who was the father of King David. Amazing lineage from a prostitute in Jericho that saw people that were sent by God, and she reached out and was underneath that covenant. And that's for us today. To realize what we have, what we've been asked to do, to come and glorify God and just seek him and then act on the faith that he's given us.